If you want to listen to Lovely completely uninterrupted, you can subscribe to our Apple Podcast channel for ad-free episodes. It's $3.99 a month, and we would really appreciate your support. Hello, and welcome back to Lovely. I'm your host, Mahek, and happy Friday. I hope everyone listening is doing better than I am today. She's a little sick, but the show must go on. So here we are. And speaking of the show must go on, everyone buckle up. We're going to go somewhere that is very online, very aesthetic, and very 2025. Today's episode, we have a really exciting topic. We also have a really exciting guest, and we're going to talk about the rise of the trad wife. Trad wives, if you've somehow missed this corner of the internet, are women who are focusing on being full-time homemakers and prioritizing and choosing family over career and taking on more of the domestic roles.
We have a whole generation of women that are hungry to learn these basic skills, and they are looking to the internet to teach them these skills. This is what happens when the pendulum swings so far one way. It has to come back down.
Social media has made it into an aesthetic. The dresses and the baking and the nice kitchens and the perfect lighting. And it's controversial because some people think it's empowering, choose your own gender role, while others see it as outdated or restrictive. I do want to say right off the bat that I am not anti-domesticity. I am not anti-femininity. I'm not anti-women choosing softness or choosing home. I don't think it's new. Homemaking has always existed. What is new is TikTok, with capitalism and the patriarchy being rebranded as domesticity, as an aesthetic. And it almost just seems very performative. So to dissect this with me, I have invited someone who has been talking about it loudly and smartly and hilariously. Her name is Piazza. She is a best-selling author, an award-winning journalist, and the host of a hit podcast called Under the Influence.
Instagram has flattened the work of motherhood in a lot of ways. It has flattened how we view the labor of motherhood. It makes it look like it is pretty and easy and joyous all of the time, and when things are viewed that way, we don't think that we need to value them.
Her latest book, Everyone is Lying to You, was also released in July of this year. So Jo, welcome to Lovely. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me today.
Yeah, I'm so happy. I mean, before we get into, everything that I mentioned and all about your book and your life, how prepared are we for the holidays?
I'm doing okay. My mantra for this December is to do less. I've been saying no a lot more. I have 3 small children. They are 8, 6, and 3. And my Christmas shopping is pretty much done. We just got our tree up. We decorated the tree. And yeah, I'm saying no to social engagements I don't want to go to. And I'm just trying to give myself as much grace as possible.
I fully support that. And I mean, it sounds like you have so much on the go, and adding 3 kids to the mix, I'm sure it gets even tougher. But I want to start where I start with all my guests, right? What is your connection to immigrant identity, and how does it shape the way you see womanhood?
It's a really interesting question for me, and one that I have a different answer to now than I would have maybe 5 years ago. So last summer, I actually released a novel called The Sicilian Inheritance, which is loosely based on the murder of my great-great-grandmother, Lorenza Marsala, back in Sicily in 1916. And she was killed before she could immigrate with my great-great-grandfather and her children over here to America. So all of the men came here, and she was left there for quite some time and was killed before she could come here. And I've known this story my whole life, but I didn't know the details of it. Most of my family members didn't even know her name. And I started looking into it for a potential novel. And I found out that when, nearly 1 million men left southern Italy and Sicily to come to America around the turn of the 20th century, the women were left behind, and not just for a summer, not just for a year, but sometimes for 10 years at a time. And these women's stories have largely been forgotten. But when they were left behind in these villages, they took the men's jobs. They started buying and selling land. They learned to read and to write and to do more complicated math and accounting than ever before because they hadn't been allowed to with the men there in a lot of areas. And so it was this incredible feminist time. And it was also a story that had not been passed down in my own family. When I think about immigrant experiences and, that date back hundreds of years even, I try to think a lot about the stories that are not being told. The story in my family was of the men who came here and built a new life. And it wasn't the stories of the women who were left behind, the stories of the women who were the rocks of their family, who typically raised the money for the men to come here in the first place. And then also the stories of the women who didn't necessarily want to come, who were very happy and content in their communities back in the old country, but really had no choice because they weren't the primary decision makers in their families.
Hearing you say this story, a lot has changed and a lot has evolved, but it kind of is still in some ways very similar. I think in certain communities and certain countries, it's still like the women are being left behind or they don't have as much choice. But I guess I wanted to ask, like, you learning about this story and also some of the other stories, what impact did it have on you and the way you walk through life?
Well, I think it reminded me that there is so much strength and so much bravery in the women's stories who came before me, and to appreciate those stories, to continue to tell them. I have 2 daughters, and to also help them create their own narrative of their own lives and speak those stories very loudly so that those stories do continue to be remembered. And you said something that's really interesting, that in other places around the world, women still lack agency. I think they still lack agency in lots of parts of America, to be honest. And, most of my work, whether it's in my reporting on the podcast or in my fiction, focuses on the way that women's stories are told, the way that they're filtered through a male gaze, and who is creating these narratives around what femininity means. I think a lot of those narratives have been created by men.
To benefit them. Absolutely. I think you and I have a similar view on it. But I appreciate you sharing that story and the connection to immigrant identity. And I know you mentioned you have 2 daughters and you have 3 kids and you're married. This is a dating podcast. We talk about relationship experiences. How did you meet your husband? What was that like?
I met my husband when I was 35 years old. I was very much a grown human being who had my own way of doing things in the world. And we were journalists. We were both on assignment on an eco cruise in the Galapagos. I was running Yahoo Travel at the time, and my husband was running his own sustainability website. And yeah, there was this 10-day cruise. We were trapped out at sea with no internet. And on the last day, we made out on the top of the boat. He was living in San Francisco at the time. I was in New York. We had a whirlwind dating experience and got engaged within 3 months and married in 9 months. And at that point, I was like, oh my gosh, I have no idea how to be a wife. Like, I'm very good at being by myself. What does this even mean? And because I was a travel editor, we got to travel around the world a lot during that first year of marriage and ask people, how does marriage work in dozens of cultures around the world? And that turned into a nonfiction book actually called How to Be Married.
Wow. I mean, I was just going to say your story sounds like straight out of a rom-com. And what a power couple. So you were 35 when you met your now husband. What was your mindset before meeting him? Were you actively looking to meet someone, or it just kind of happened by fate or chance?
All of the cliches were completely true.
So you'll get it when you least expect it. Was it that?
Yes, it was, which is so insane. And if I told you that, then I would have said, "You're ridiculous. Shut your mouth." I was one of the last of my friends to get married. I had been everyone's bridesmaid, everyone's maid of honor. I was so sick of it. I was just sick of it. I was exhausted. I hated dating. I had dated every douchebag in New York City, literally all of them. And I had just had a bad breakup with a guy who definitely would not have been right for me, but I was just trying to shoehorn him in to that role, basically because for me, and I think this is messaging that women especially get, and we still get it in our society, it's that you have to get married. You have to get married by a certain age. If you don't, there's something wrong with you. And I had really internalized that. So after this bad breakup with my sad ex-boyfriend, he was just perpetually sad. I took a break. I gave up drinking for a while. I did that mid-30s thing where you're like, I'm going to run a bunch of marathons. It's a total cry for help. You are always running from something. And so I really just had kind of sworn it all off for a bit. I took this trip to Kenya. It was a travel journalism trip. And while I was there, I was in Kenya and Tanzania. And I bought myself this gorgeous tanzanite ring. At the time, it was like one of the most expensive things that I'd ever bought myself. And I called it my engagement ring. I wrote this story for Elle magazine, which you can still find. It still goes viral like every once in a while. I bought myself an engagement ring. I'm choosing myself. I loved it. I still have the ring. Anyway, I write that. And then a month later, I met Nick on a boat.
And you're right. I think you said something earlier that this messaging is still being passed down to women where, choice is like you can choose whichever lifestyle you want to live, right? If you want to not be married and you just want to have a cat or have a dog and like just live your life the way you want to live it. I was watching a TikTok and someone was like, women need to lower their standards. Otherwise, they're going to continue living in their beautiful homes with their beautiful wardrobe with their fulfilling relationships with their girlfriends. It's like, oh my God, don't tempt me with a good time, you know? But I also love the duality of it, right? Like you are allowed to choose whatever you want. If it happens for you, fantastic. But just because it's not happening for you, but it's happening for someone else's timeline, you don't shrink or you don't lose your value. But you're married, you have kids. As an observer of modern dating culture today, I guess what are some observations or critiques that you have?
I and I hate the cliches because when I was single and people said cliches to me, I was like, I will stab you in the eye with a fork. But I do worry a little bit about just obsessing over the idea of marriage and having to be married by a certain time. The one thing I think that women should think more about is, do you want kids or not? Right? Because our bodies are just not created to have kids after a certain point. And if you want to have kids, I'd love to see more women opting to do that on their own. It is a hard but a viable option. And even freezing your eggs can be a gamble. I have a lot of friends who were very disappointed by the results of freezing their eggs. And so if having kids is a major priority for you, then making that part of your life plan. And again, that is a thing you can be ambitious about, and choosing how you want to do that. I think that's more important than choosing to get married or chasing after the idea of marriage. I think choosing motherhood and making a plan for motherhood, because sadly our bodies do often have an expiration date on that. And I've watched a lot of my friends go through that and be heartbroken when they couldn't be a mom, if that's something that they did want. My other concern is that people are not spending enough time in real life with each other and interacting in real life. There is just too much time on our phones, like way less options for serendipity. I joke all the time that there was no Wi-Fi on the boat where Nick and I were. And he's like, that didn't have anything to do with it. And I'm like, it had everything to do with it, because even 10 years ago, I was constantly working. So if there was internet, I wouldn't have been playing cards up in the galley with people in the evenings. And that's how I got to know my future husband. And, when you think about opportunities for serendipity, like meeting in a coffee shop, meeting in a bar, if we're all just staring at our screens during these moments of downtime, we're literally never going to interact with other humans or even know how to interact with other humans. So I do worry about the impact that screen time is having on relationships and the opportunity to meet people.
I agree with that wholeheartedly because it's like you can no longer even believe the fantasy of meeting someone at a grocery store because you're on your phone, my love. You're not even looking up for someone to have an in to talk to you. There is no serendipity moment. Actually, I did have one recently and I was like, oh, does this mean something? No, it very much ended very quickly, but it was a cute story. It was the cutest meet cute I've had in a while. Let's segue into the meat and potatoes of our podcast today. I really want to talk about what is a trad wife? What does it mean? And how did this become a thing? And why, you're a subject matter expert on it. So it's like, how did that all come to fruition?
Oh my gosh, I have unwittingly become America's leading expert on trad wives. It's amazing. I've been covering mom influencers for about 5 years now. Ever since, oh my God, now 6 years, ever since I had my second baby, my first daughter, and she didn't sleep for the first 6 months. And they tell you that when babies come out of your body, that they can't really see or focus on you right away. So don't worry if they don't look at you. No, this one looked me straight in the eye the second she came out of my vagina and was like, "We ride at dawn, bitch." Like, she's me. Okay. And so she didn't sleep. I was awake all the time and rocking her, putting her on the boob, off the boob, and just constantly scrolling Instagram because the only appendage I had free was my thumb. I was being served all of these picture perfect women, these picture perfect mothers in their clean white houses with their smiley, happy, chubby babies who are just like clean. Everything is clean. No one's covered in pee and poop, and everyone seems to breastfeed really well. And they're all wearing $400 Doan dresses and floppy hats. And I was like, this is not my life. This is not my reality. Who are these women? And also, all of them were trying to sell me something. They were all trying to sell me something that would soothe the angst that I was feeling. They were trying to fix me. And a lot of the content they were posting, these perfect images, was clearly designed. I mean, I come from a media background. I made magazines for a long time, right? So, like, I get media literacy. It was clearly designed to make you feel even more off kilter than you already were so they could sell you the problem solver. And I really wanted to start reporting on this. I started the podcast Under the Influence. The first 2 seasons are a really deep dive into the world and business of mom influencing. And at first, I thought I was just going to pull back the curtain on this. And I did. But through the reporting, I realized that there is a lot of yes and going on, that like two things can be true at the same time. A lot of this can be very damaging for women. It can create a lot of guilt and shame. It is very deeply rooted in toxic capitalism, but also the corporate world and the working world is terrible for women, terrible for mothers. We are treated so poorly. And social media allows women to create their own jobs, their own media ecosystems, to launch their own brands, to make their own money. And it can be just as powerful and helpful for women as it can be harmful.
When we look at the rise of the trad wife movement, influencers are the ones that you see living this aesthetic and kind of selling it to the masses. And one name that comes to mind is Nara Smith.
I asked my husband what he wanted for lunch today. He said he wasn't too hungry. All he wanted was a small Caesar salad with some protein. So I started by spatchcocking my chicken, making a quick garlic lemon thyme butter.
What is your take on the Nara Smiths of the world? And what do you think they're selling? And what do you think people are not seeing?
What I saw was an evolution about 2 years ago from just the standard run of the mill mom influencer to trad wifery, which was this really intense performance of domestic labor, specifically designed to sell you something that also came along with these very conservative undercurrents that said things like a woman's highest calling or only calling is to be in the home caring for not just her children, but caring for her husband, that a woman should be submissive to her husband, that young women will be so much happier if they're not working outside the home, if they just let a man take care of them. And we're starting to see the cracks in that facade. We're starting to see these influencers truly step up and say, oh no, I want to be a mogul. I want to be the CEO of my own brand. And there was a recent profile in the New York Times of Nara Smith, who for a long time was performing these domestic tasks on social media as an influencer who was monetizing her content, who knew very well that the algorithm really liked this kind of submissive seeming woman performing labors in the home. And now she's openly saying, I am running a company. I want to be a media mogul. I left my child with the nanny so I could take all of these meetings today. We're finally seeing these women more for who they really are, which is women who truly do want to build businesses out of this aesthetic.
Just to add into that, I think this whole movement of trad wives, I feel like they're selling a lifestyle they themselves are paid to escape. When it becomes dangerous is like some people are doing it really well because, the Nara Smiths of the world, they look a certain way, they have backing behind them, and their post goes viral. If your post doesn't go viral and you're being sold that aesthetic and you're buying into it, which, let's be honest, a lot of people are, then you risk being dependent. And dependency is where it gets dangerous, right?
And again, look, I truly believe that like the best form of feminism, and every time I talk about this now, I get shit on by a bunch of feminists and it's exhausting and it's the problem with feminism these days. What we need to be promoting is choice for all women, choice and options. If you want to take on all of the labor of running a household, amazing. You should have incredible options and a safety net to do that. Same thing if you want to go back to the workplace. You should have all of the protections. You should be making as much as a man. You should have paid childcare. We need choice and we need options, and that should be the highest calling.
I agree. And I think where we kind of lose the plot is like, how do we differentiate between like true autonomy and that gives you comfort in doing all these things that you want to do versus conditioning? Right? That's like being sold to you as empowerment. Like you're right. Exactly. There needs to be choice. And you can love homemaking and love ambition, right? You can be feminine and independent. But I think where, again, it gets dangerous, it's like, here, I'm going to sell you this fantasy that offers something really tempting because there is choice paralysis, right? Women today have more freedom than any generation before us, but also more pressure, more decisions, more burnout, more chaos. So I think the trad wife fantasy is like, hey, we'll give you one role, one identity, one purpose, one structure. But I just hate the fact that it still doesn't benefit them. It's still built by a system of men to please men. Another area where my brain went, and maybe like correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like every time women gain a new form of freedom, some nostalgic aesthetic pulls us back, right? Like history keeps glitching. Like when we got the right to vote in like 1920s or by the 50s, we had some other propaganda. Then when we entered the workforce in 60s and 70s, then the supermom myth came, right? It's like every time we take steps forward, capitalism is like, no, you're getting too far ahead. You're going to be way too like dangerous. We're going to pull you back.
Yeah, absolutely. The really toxic and upsetting thing about that is that it is often being controlled by other women as well. And that's what I found so dangerous about the trad wife movement, because it started coming up around the later days of the pandemic and then really gathering steam more and more. I mean, I think we saw it really reach an apex a couple of years ago. But the way that I define trad wife is not someone who stays in the home. I actually hate the word staying in the home. I'm talking to my friend Nia Rush this week on my podcast about how can we completely eradicate the phrase stay at home mom, because it's ridiculous and no one is just staying. Everyone is running around all the time because caring for a household is so much work. But I see trad wife as someone who is explicitly performing domestic labors on social media for a profit. And they're capitalizing on this kind of false nostalgia for a time that never really existed, not in the 50s, certainly not in, Little House on the Prairie time, because women are so exhausted because the workplace and the world has burned us out and we're looking for a soft place to land. And they've created this very binary choice of, well, you can be miserable working outside the home for money, or you could give all of that up and have this soft life at home, raising your babies. My biggest problem, and I have a lot of problems with tradwifery performed online, they erase all of the labor from the home. So you only see the bread. You don't see the messy kitchen. And every time I bake something, my entire kitchen is coated in flour. My children are coated in flour. I have flour in every orifice of my body. Okay. We don't see that.
You said a really good point there. It's like they erase the labor of it and just glamorize the output, which is not how life works.
I don't like the story being sold to women that it's easier, because I don't think it is. I think working and not being the full-time caregiver for my children all day is easier. Granted, mine are in school all day now, though. But I don't like the myth that it's easier. It's not easier. I also do not like the mythology, and I think it's very dangerous, of being dependent on a man is easier, because men can leave you, men can die, men could spend all your money behind your back and you'd have no idea. If this is something that you're choosing, you have to have a very clear strategy for financial independence and a very clear strategy for how to support yourself and to survive and to support your children and help them to thrive if a man is no longer in the picture.
Totally. And again, that's dependency, right? Oh my God, I was looking at content on this before hopping on recording this episode. There was this woman who was in our car and she was speaking to the camera and she's like, I do not have a career. I chose to raise my kids.
They're 5 and 7. And I've been a stay-at-home mom for the past 10 plus years. I have no income. I have no money. I use my husband's credit card and I use my husband's money. And 2 weeks ago, he told me that he wants to move forward with divorce. Today, I literally, like, I use an American Express credit card for everything. It's got my name on it, but obviously he pays the bill. He told me he's gonna cut it off, and I gotta, like, move all the automatic payments and stop using it. And he said, you need to start using your own card now. What card? I don't have a card. That is my card.
And in the comments, people are like, you do have half of his money. Like, you've been married for, so and so time. She's like, I don't. I signed a prenup.
Yep.
I would lose my fucking mind. Like, I would go to jail. I'm sorry. What?
I know, 100%.
It's such a sad reality that it happens.
And it happens so often. We don't hear about it. One, it's not glossy and beautiful on social media, right? So that's not being elevated to where we see this tradwife content. And it often feels shameful because women feel guilt and shame like they did something wrong. So they're not sharing those stories. When my dad passed away, my parents were married for more than 30 years. When he passed away, she found out that he hadn't paid taxes in years and he'd taken out a second mortgage on their house, so she had no equity and no safety net whatsoever. He just did it. I mean, she has no idea what he spent the money on. And she was left with nothing, essentially. So it is just such a common story. I do like to preface all of this with the fact that I love men. I love good men. I'm raising a good man. I'm married to a good man. And I also think that a big charge of feminism going forward is to nurture more good men in the world, because we also can't, nor should we, be doing this on our own. But there are so many toxic men out there. And I do not like the narrative of the knight in shining armor, that a man is going to come in and swoop in and rescue you and solve all of your problems. If we're being honest about the economics of the world right now, more men are getting laid off on a regular basis. And, women who are laid off from their jobs are much more likely to pivot. They're much more likely to shift careers. They're much more likely to figure it out, because that is what we are very good at. And men are not. And so many of my female friends are now the breadwinners in their families. The economic reality is also that most people cannot support a household or typical American household on one income. And I don't know where these young women who say, well, I just want to be a trad wife, a soft girl, and have a man support me. I don't know where they think all these rich men are. But these things do really well on social media. And I've talked to a lot of young women who have told me, be like, I just want to be a soft girl. I just want a man to pay for me to go to yoga, and I'll make him like a meal every day and I'll make the bed. And I'm like, that is not what you are in for, if that is the relationship you're looking for, because that man is typically going to be incredibly domineering, controlling, and you're not going to have your own financial safety net.
Gender roles still exist today, but they're definitely not the same as they used to be back in the day, right? Like where the man is like the sole financial provider and women are, taking care of the household and then like taking care of the man. As women are earning more, they're getting more education, they're in careers of their own. What's your take on power and gender dynamics? And like, I guess, how does it, if you're open to sharing, how does it work in like your marriage? Like, is it pretty traditional or is it like kind of what works for you? Like, how does the caretaking and childcare and finances work in your own life that your kids are seeing an example of?
Yeah, I do want to say one thing off the bat, too. It's that these gender roles existed for so long because it behooved men and because women weren't allowed to work and women weren't allowed to have credit cards. I mean, like, it's not as if this is some kind of natural order to things. But in the past 100 years in this country, it's because women weren't getting hired for jobs. Women couldn't get access to education and women couldn't get access to money. And that's the way it's been in most of the world. It's not as if this is just, ordained by the universe. It's because mostly men chose that their lives would be easier if women were the ones taking care of the home and taking care of them. In my family, I'm not even going to say it's non-traditional because I also don't love the word traditional. It's like, whose tradition are we talking about? Where is this coming from? In my family right now, we've done a lot of different iterations of how this works, and it's changed a lot. When I got married, both of us had our own finances. We had our own lives and our own careers. And we've seen different fluctuations of how we work. When I had my first baby, I was fully freelance and my husband was definitely the breadwinner. He was working on his own company. Over the next few years, my career as an author and a podcaster really took off, and we were both working all the time, and we had caregivers working with us. We had au pairs for a really long time. After we had our second baby for about 5 years, we only recently don't have an au pair any longer because all three of our kids are in school until 3 every day. And then recently, in the past 2 years, my husband got laid off, and we talk about this very publicly, and he's pivoted careers and switched. And now I'm the breadwinner in the family, whereas he was before. And we've worked really hard for him to take on more childcare duties and more running of the household. And that's been an uphill battle because I don't think that we're culturally prepared for that. And we've worked really hard on it. And now we've launched a media company together. It's called Influential Media. And we're running a company and a household together. So it's a lot. It's a lot of work. We're both putting in a lot of work. I don't know how one person runs a household because I feel like we're both doing a full-time job there, just trying to manage 3 children. It's a challenge, but it's also what we're modeling for our kids. I asked my daughter, my 6-year-old, I'm like, what do you want to be? She's like, an astronaut and a mom. And I'm like, you can be both things. That's amazing. I love being a mother so much more than I thought I would be. I mean, I had 3 of them, right? After the age of 35, I had my last one at 42. And I also love being a really successful creator in the world. You can be both things. My kids really respect my job. They come on book tour with me and they love it. That is a really good thing to model for children. That idea of these gender roles where a man makes the money and a man is the like hunter and protector. To me, it's bullshit. And I think it's really toxic and hazardous. And I think it's also contributed a lot to male depression and the male loneliness epidemic because it's telling men that they can only be one thing. And that sucks if they happen to not be good at that one thing. And the truth is, most men are.
We were saying earlier that we're not like talking about feminism here and being toxic about it. Like we see both sides of it. And I think you and your husband are actually modeling something really healthy for your kids. And I think it takes a lot of bravery and strength to undo years and years and years of conditioning. I want to talk about your most recent book, Everyone is Lying to You. Tell me more about it. Who is lying to us and what are they lying to us about?
Oh my God. I mean, pretty much everyone is lying to you. We all are. We all pick and choose what we're going to show of ourselves online. And we live in an age where everyone has to be a brand of some sort, which is exhausting. And I wish that we didn't live in that age, but I can't get off social media. It's the number one way that I sell my books and that I sell my content. There is so much that we don't see on camera and on social media. And because these picture perfect lives aren't picture perfect, when we look at a lot of the trad wife influencers, what we don't see are their armies of nannies. So many influencers also rent entire houses. So we're not seeing their even actual house. They're just renting a kitchen for the day. They can even rent a farm with chickens and goats just to perform farm labor for the Instagram because henfluencing is very successful. Once I realized all of those smoke and mirrors and deception, I was like, well, this is just ripe for murder. I started to write, what I call the quintessential trad wife murder mystery. Everyone is lying to you. And it's about two best friends who have they had a falling out right after college. And now one of them is a massive trad wife influencer living on her gorgeous ranch somewhere out west with her gaggle of children and her handsome cowboy husband. But nothing is as it seems. And the other friend is a journalist who she reaches out to and says, I have a big scoop for you. Meet me at this crazy mom influencing conference called Mom Bomb. And she does. And then the influencer's husband winds up dead. She goes missing. And the journalist has to try to figure out what is real and what is all smoke and mirrors on social media in order to try to clear her friend's name.
Oh my God, I'm on the edge of my seat wanting to know more. But how has the success of the book been since you released it?
It's been great. We came out in July. It's selling really, really well. It's a national bestseller. I did a 3-week book tour all over the country in red and blue states. And what I can tell you is that women, especially young women, are very hungry for this kind of content. The book is fun. It's a thriller. It's also lightly satirical and sometimes laugh out loud funny. But at its heart, we do get to talk about these things. Like, what does women's ambition mean? And how can we get the things that we want? And what I found is that young women were really hungry to talk about those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially from a different POV where I feel like you're giving them the good, bad, and the ugly, right? And I think online, you're just giving the good. So it's hard to kind of understand where your POV lies and what do you want for yourself? Because let's be honest, when I was younger, my frontal lobe wasn't developed. And I always love getting advice from people who have lived experiences that I haven't lived, and then kind of making your own judgment about it. But if you don't have that muscle to make that judgment, you'll take anything at face value. So I do like that there are different opinions on this.
Yeah, I do too. And the book explores women wanting to have these different kinds of ambitions. It explores women really wanting to be ambitious about motherhood and fully lean into that. And then women really wanting to be ambitious about a career. And then other women who just want balance, which is really all that I want. I'm like, I want to work and I want to have kids. And I want to love both of those things.
Yeah, you can build a home and build a career. And softness does not have to mean submission, in the way that it's being packaged to you. But I guess what is the final verdict? What do we want women listening to this to actually take away?
I want us to be a little bit more savvy about what we're being served on social media. If something is making us feel guilt or shame about our own life, then it's not serving us. You get to curate what you're looking at. You get to curate how the algorithm serves you. The truth is that the majority of people performing on social media are there in order to sell you things. And I think that's hard to remember because social media is supposed to be social and it's happening on the same platform where, say, we see our cousin's new baby or our neighbor's cute dog. But that is intermingled with people selling to you and wanting you to feel off kilter about your own life so that you'll buy things from them. So I just think we all have to be a little bit more media savvy going forward because this is only going to get more dangerous, especially as AI is introduced into the mix. And I would love to see media literacy be more of a thing in our society. And for children, for grown-ups, I want to see it taught in public schools as young as kindergarten.
Oh my God. And like you said, everyone is lying to you. I know we're coming up closer to an end, and I would love to ask you a question that my last guest left. So we have this tradition where the last guest leaves a question for you, and then you will leave a question for my next guest. DB is Danielle Bezalel. She is a sex educator. She also has her own podcast. And she wanted to ask, what is one thing that you are doing consistently for yourself right now to give yourself pleasure?
It's such a good question. And I'm trying to prioritize my own pleasure much more than I have maybe in the past 9 years since I started breeding so much. I'm making sure that I'm reading every day and reading for fun, because not all reading for me is fun. Because I'm a writer, a lot of it is actually work, but I'm choosing books that are simply for pure enjoyment. I am prioritizing working out, but that is less for pleasure. And that is more for, I want to be strong. I want to have a strong ass, middle-aged lady body. I will say I'm really prioritizing spending time with my girlfriends and traveling alone as well. I recently went to Paris. I was finishing up my new novel, The Parisian Heist, which is out next summer. But I had a bunch of girlfriends come with me. And so we had dinners every night, and we made sure to go on long walks and shopping together. And so prioritizing that kind of socializing that truly brings me joy and is especially centered around being in a new place and discovering a new place and eating delicious food is something that I'm really prioritizing now, and I will be in the coming years.
That's lovely. And I think food is the sixth love language. And I guess, Joe, what is your question for my next guest?
So I've been thinking a lot about nostalgia, a lot of nostalgia that people my age, and I'm 45, have for the decade, like the 90s. And then the nostalgia that some people younger than me that never experienced that have for the decade. And I don't think it's necessarily a longing for the 90s, although I did just get some really nice vintage Doc Martens from the Camden Market in London. I think it's more of a longing for real life and for being in real life with people without being on screens. And so I'd like to know how your next guest is prioritizing real life over life, just living in the digital world.
Ooh, very, very interesting question. I love it so much. I can't wait to ask that one. I would love for you to plug your socials and any other information that you think our listeners would find helpful.
I'm on Instagram at Joe Piazza Author. I have a newsletter called Over the Influence. My podcast is called Under the Influence. And you can find my books wherever books are sold. Everyone is Lying to You is the newest one. And then next summer, we have The Parisian Heist, which is a feminist art heist in the present day and a past timeline of the untold story of Joe Van Gogh.
Ooh, very much in time for the whole Louvre incident that we just saw.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, well, I will end the episode by saying I think my biggest takeaway and kind of messaging is women are allowed to love softness, but I think the problem is not when it's being sold back to you as like a performance or a brand or a pathway to anyone's approval, not just male approval. The problem is the complex around that it romanticizes dependency as empowerment. And that's where I think it gets dangerous.
Well, absolutely. And that it strips the labor of homemaking. It makes it seem like that's the easier choice when anyone who has ever tried it knows that it's not.
Thank you so much, Joe, for being here today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Lovely is an Immigrantly media production. This episode was produced by Sadia Khan and Shay Yu, written by me, Mahak. Theme music, sound design, and editing by Lou Raskin. Other music is by Epidemic Sound. Tune in every Friday for more Lovely.